This is a in-between moment celestial chatter that I'm bringing you based on a lot of factors, not the least of which is the fact that we're in eclipse season right now, and it's kind of like a sandwich between the lunar node, the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse. Lunar eclipse was last weekend, the solar eclipse is next weekend. So, and here we are, we're kind of right in the middle almost. And right here in the middle of these two eclipses is Mercury retrograde, just for a little extra spice to throw into what it is that the eclipses are asking for us to actually consider. So this is the eclipse from last week, our lunar eclipse. It actually happened at 5 degrees of Libra, not 9 where it is right now, but it's close enough. And South Node eclipse in the sign of Libra. So therefore, the energy quotient that eclipses stand for is something that it can at times seem complicated, that something so fleeting as an eclipse could carry a long footprint. And yet, those who have put forth information about eclipses are quite clear that, if for nothing else, the degree where an eclipse happens stays sensitive for an elongated period of time. And sometimes the lunar eclipse degree actually stays sensitive for even longer than a solar eclipse degree. So this 5 degrees of Libra, when I say sensitive, what it means is that as the planets continue to move, which is just what they do, they are going to make aspects, every kind of aspect you can imagine to that 5 degrees of Libra. And when they do, they activate, what was the signature of that particular eclipse that was in play then. And I have a book by Bernadette Brady called Predictive Astrology. I have, I think, 3 or 4 books called Predictive Astrology, not a one the same. Anyway, where do eclipses come from? Perhaps a little bit of a complicated situation, but if you see the cursor that I have on the screen here, consider this is kind of like the northern, and this is the southern aspect of our ecliptic plane of life. Why am I saying north is down south and south is up north? Well, the reason why is that we here in the northern hemisphere, when we are looking at the actual dance that the sun and planets make across the sky, it's an arc that goes across the southern part of the sky, which is where Capricorn is, that winter darkness, the southernmost point, 0 degrees Capricorn. And Cancer, middle of summer. Sun is almost straight overhead. The eclipses, they start out with the sun and the moon coming together, solar eclipse. And the closer that takes place to either one of these points, north or south, is an initiation process to a much longer range eclipse cycle, because once that eclipse cycle begins, they start to move. You can kind of see the node starts slipping backwards, continues to slip backwards as it goes through the different signs, and the eclipses that are related to the initiating point of an eclipse carry an energy that is in play for every one of the eclipses that are actually tuning into this beginning point of the eclipse dance cycle. This particular eclipse cycle right now that we're doing, first lunar, then solar, is known as 8 north. You know, at any one time there can be, I don't even know, a lot of eclipse cycles going on. I'm just looking in this book. It looks like about 19 or 20 eclipse cycles going on at any one time, and they pan out. Once they've gone all the way, and they can go around this zodiac a couple of times before they finally end up back near the 0 point of south or north. Anyway, this is an 8 north eclipse cycle that we're in right now, and the write-up for that particular energy to pay attention to, I'm going to cover some other things, but is inventiveness and flashes of genius are the hallmark of this Saros cycle. And Saros is the process that they refer to. A Saros cycle is when one planet catches up with another and then begins to expand out from that conjunction. That's the beginning of a Saros cycle. The individual will have intuitive leaps, insight, good ideas, visions or vivid dreams. I just moved my microphone down closer. Should be able to hear me a little bit better now. This newfound inspiration will pull the person away from his or her social life or relationship, thereby causing strain in the private life. This is a time when the person needs to be free, if only for a few weeks. Now, okay, we have a Libra lunar eclipse that took place last weekend, setting in motion the sensitivity of that 5th degree of Libra. What does Venus have to say about this? Because anything that happens in Libra, well, Venus has got something to say about it. And Libra, it has something to say about partnership. You know, in what avenue of the partnership realm does Venus tune into right now and say, hey, by the way, you should pay attention to this? Well, Venus right now is doing its, movement, dance, if you will, through the sign of Pisces. And in Pisces, it's known as exalted, which means that it's happy. It's receiving, pats on the back, accolades, or whatever have you, about that Venusian energy signature in the realm of Pisces. Well, what does the realm of Pisces have to say about how, or what might be the most effective way to express the Venusian relationship factor? From the Piscean perspective, it has to do with shallow relationships and partnerships really aren't going to have, or they're just not going to carry much weight, because Venus is in Pisces. It's a dance of depth, a look into what does spirit have to say? How is my soul influenced by the process of who I am actually engaging in partnership with? And so you can kind of see that that particular lunar eclipse, which moved into, direct our awareness, if you will, last weekend, carrying this weight of, how, how effective is my communication with others in any partnership matter that Venus in Pisces might be inclined to push me toward querying when I get together with my partners. And this eclipse cycle that began last weekend is saying, pay attention to this, because there are factors that are going to continue to come to the surface as we go through this long cycle, however long it is. I hear that, it was not out of the question for an eclipse cycle to last for 3.5 years or more, where that point where they transpired stays sensitive. And this is across the Aries Libra axis of the chart, which is Aries, self, and Libra, other. So the whole energy container within which this eclipse dance is asking us to pay attention right now has to really make sure that, we understand who it is that is being invited into this deeper consideration of how best to play out the partnership dance process. How much of Aries self should I invest in and when I'm actually interacting with other people at a partnership level? That's always the case. You can't separate the signs that are opposite from one another. You can't have a partnership if there's no self. And you can't have a self devoid of partnership. It would get really, really lonely really quick. And Aries, quickness is on the table always. And, just to add a little extra flavor into this, the solar eclipse, which comes up at 19 degrees of Aries on April Fool's Day, Mars is the ruler of Aries. Mars is as well in Pisces, and so, there's that depth of consciousness that Pisces always represents. So, that Mars feeding its energy into self, that Aries warrior type archetype, is saying, or maybe it's just asking a question. If you're going to go to war with something or someone or an experience, an event, another culture, why? Are there deeper ramifications as to the reasons that you may feel a little on edge with someone else at whatever level? And might it be that perhaps there is, or there are, aspects of the energy in play between you that you're not seeing clearly? You're not doing like in Pisces, actually investigating the deepest potential level of what that interaction space could be about. If, from the Aries perspective, we don't become too pig-headed or stubborn or, driven to accomplish something without much thought. And now, just for a little extra excitement in this, eclipse cycle that we're about, and that 19 degrees of Aries, it's going to stay sensitive for a long time too. And you can kind of see, since this is where all the planets are right now: Mars, Saturn, Venus, Neptune, the Sun. So 19 degrees of Aries is going to get, crossed by the Sun, by Venus, by Mars, eventually by Saturn, but not for a couple of years, maybe 3 years probably. And, whether that actually is still a sensitive point at that time or not remains to be seen. But Mercury, our player in the mixed, is going to go retrograde on April Fool's Day at 27 degrees of Aries, and it's going to go all the way back to 15, 16 degrees of Aries, which means it's going to cross that solar eclipse point once on its way back, and then it's going to turn around and it's going to come back across that point again. One thing to keep in mind, I was in a workshop with Gary Caton yesterday. Yeah, I haven't been in one with him for years. Always a hoot to hang with my peeps, and Gary is one of the clan that I actually really, really appreciate. So, I think, one of the interesting factors that he brought up, and this is something that he actually discovered himself through the investigation of really getting out there under the stars and feeling the energy of what it is that's actually transpiring in space, and our part within that, if we are to but pay attention, is that, these Mercury retrograde cycles transpire in sequences of the signs of the elements and stuff. And 2024, not being an exception to this, has the first eclipse in Aries, second eclipse in Leo, and the third eclipse in Sagittarius. They are considerably contained within the fire element. And, I'll give you some fire is hot and it's dry. It's not about making connections. It's actually about separating things. I'll give you some of the terms that you might want to consider as we go through each of these Mercury retrograde cycles this year as to what might be in play. Hardness separates, parched earth, tension, discrimination, analysis, categorization, breaking things down, making distinctions, solitude, estrangement, politics, warfare, conflict, defining limits, making boundaries, structure, organization, but also wisdom. Transformation is included in this process. And, from the perspective of just that last term, transformation, something to keep in mind as we go through each of these Mercury retrograde cycles, this particular one beginning on April 1st and going until April 24th, is that so-called potential breakdown that often seems to transpire when we're what would it be, trying to accomplish more in a particular frame of reference, be that time, attitude, opportunity, then is best contained or completed within that context. And as such, Mercury retrograde cycles quite easily could represent a time of initiation. Yeah, I wanted to do this, this got in the way. Instead of going, oh my God, why did that get in the way? What is this? What did I do wrong and stuff? Step back. Take some deep breaths and wonder into what is really transpiring in this Mercury retrograde process that I may be missing because I'm trying to get to or be where I am not. The initiation process says, be here in this moment. Pay attention to what is going on and sense. Allow your soul, if you will, to awaken to what might I be being asked to realize in this initiation process. What might I be being queried to awaken to that, if I'm willing, could actually alter the direction for the rest of my life? Mercury retrograde, even though it has been painted quite often and unscrupulously and unknowingly as being such a negative thing to have to deal with. I can't think right. My words come out mumbled and befuddled and stuff. These Mercury retrograde cycles, which happen, ironically, Mercury, when it goes through these retrograde cycles in each annual experience, actually occupy about 1/3 of the year. And the rest of the signs that Mercury's going through, where it's not being retrograde and stuff, they go by rather quickly. But when Mercury's retrograde in a sign, it's like that element is being emphasized for a reason. And Mercury, how we think, is being asked to pay attention. Are my thoughts clear enough? Am I able to be patient, perhaps, in this Mercury retrograde dance, whereby I might perceive something that wants to get my attention as an initiation to allow my soul to grow in a new direction? This is the main factor of what's in play for this ecliptical dance cycle that we are in. And that's why I had to step up to the plate and offer this extra consideration for this particular time frame that we are in, to pay attention. The moon is, it's that sensate quality that a culture actually has. It's not just at the self level. So this lunar eclipse that happened last week, as a culture, culturally around the globe, we're being asked to feel into a process of how is it that you and I are meant to get along or not? And what else? What's next on the agenda that I need to pay attention to? the solar eclipse that happens on the 8th of April in Aries. Both the sun and the moon are together there at that 19 degrees of Aries. Mercury, it's retrograde. Don't be in typical Aries rush to think that accomplishment of so many things is where the vitality exists. Remember, even in Aries, taking a few deep breaths could actually be very beneficial to what it is that not only your soul awareness, but soul awareness on a much larger context is waiting to invite into the initiatory process to awaken aspects of our soul, our collective soul beings, about what life on the planet could mean if we could awaken that deep resonant space within us to share with one another. Always. Not just when you're feeling better or not about this or that or the other thing, but is there a reason that this person has showed up on my doorstep? Are there words that might come in effective to that showing up? Yeah, words of Khalil Gibran. And God said, love your enemy. And I obeyed him and loved myself. When you get in those moments where the interaction is taking place between you and another, how about offering these thoughts into that consideration, either verbally or maybe just in your heart? What can I do for you? Can I be of help? How can I be of service? These are invitations for discovering that each of us has aspects within our makeup that were designed to be given away, gifted, if you were, by being open enough one with another to be able to discover something new that we haven't known to this point. I'm going to leave you with that thought. I may come on and do a consideration again for next week. No guarantees, because I covered the most important considerations. There's one other factor, that just makes life all that much more entertaining, and that is that the moon, which, is one of the factors in our eclipse dance, goes out of bounds on March 29th and stays out of bounds through April 3rd. And the moon can, actually any planet that's out of bounds, can be wild. It's unpredictable. And when out of bounds, it's like Don't expect the expected. It has a Uranian quality to it. It's attempting to, if we're paying attention to awaken an aspect of us that often slumbers way too long. Adieu, my friends. See you all when I come back.